Hello everyone, I'm Emmanuel, and welcome to my channel Heaven's Gate. Today, I'm here to share an urgent testimony, a message that concerns every one of us. Get ready, because what I'm about to reveal is something of unprecedented proportions. Before we dive in, I invite you to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the daily stories I share, designed to inspire you and guide you in the right direction. If you appreciate my work, I'd love a small gesture from you. Give this video a like and comment below to let me know where you're watching from. This simple act helps us feel closer and strengthens our growing community. It seemed like any other day. The fierce June sun shone brightly in a clear sky, and the hot air weighed down on everything, even the trees along the road. I put on my helmet and got on my bike, ready for the usual ride to the office. Yet something was bothering me. An indefinable feeling, as if time were holding its breath. I pedaled at a steady rhythm, letting the monotony of the road lull me. I thought about my wife and our unborn child, a future I was beginning to imagine in detail, a boy or a girl. I already saw myself with them, a happy and complete family. Suddenly, a deafening noise interrupted my thoughts. I wasn't sure what it was, maybe an out-of-control engine? In an instant, I realized what was happening. A car had suddenly swerved into my lane, skidding like a wounded animal. Instinctively, I tried to steer to avoid it, but there was no time. The impact was devastating. I felt an explosion of pain and then nothing, as if my body had been torn away from reality. The world around me dissolved into a confused chaos of colors and noises, then a deep darkness. I don't know how long I remained in that condition, maybe minutes, maybe hours. When I reopened my eyes, my first thought was that I must have woken up from a nightmare. My body was on the ground, contorted in an unnatural position. My right leg, I couldn't recognize it. It was bent in impossible ways, a grotesque sight that made me look away. Only then did I notice something even stranger. I was observing the scene from above. I saw myself lying on the asphalt, the helmet broken beside me, a pool of blood slowly spreading. People had gathered, some were shouting, others covering their mouths in horror. A man was leaning over me, trying to feel my pulse. I saw him, I heard him speak, but his voice seemed distant, as if through a glass wall. A primal fear washed over me. What was happening? Was I dying? Was I already dead? Before I could formulate an answer, I felt a presence beside me. I didn't see anyone, but an invisible force seemed to pull me, dragging me away from the scene. I tried to resist, desperately clinging to the world I knew, but it was useless. The more I tried to oppose, the stronger that force became. And then a voice arrived, calm, deep, enveloping me like a maternal embrace. Relax. Don't resist. I'm here to help you. Something in the voice disarmed me. It was impossible to oppose that calm. I let go, closed my eyes, and accepted being dragged away. I didn't know where it was taking me, but I felt I had no choice. I found myself in a tunnel. It wasn't a physical place, or at least it didn't seem so. The walls were dark, soft, as if made of smoke or solid shadows. The only thing breaking that darkness was a point of white light on the horizon. I began to move towards it, not walking, but floating, as if pushed by an invisible current. As I approached, the tunnel filled with eerie noises, a shrill sound, like nails scratching metal, and a plaintive whisper, almost a lament of pain. It was a concert of sounds that sent chills down my spine. I closed my eyes to avoid being overwhelmed by terror. After a while, the sounds began to fade, leaving only silence. When I reopened them, the tunnel had vanished. Now I was in a place that seemed to belong to another world. The sky was a pure blue that seemed impossible. An endless meadow stretched out before me, with grass so soft I would have liked to lie there forever. I could hear the sound of water, a crystal clear stream flowing peacefully not far from where I was. The air was perfect, neither hot nor cold, a gentle embrace that enveloped me completely. I wasn't alone. Around me were luminous figures, similar to people but different. They were enveloped in an aura of light, their faces serene, almost inhuman in their beauty. They seemed happy, at peace, and their presence filled me with an inexplicable joy. For a moment I thought it was all a dream, yet it was incredibly real. Is this paradise? I thought. Before I could voice the question, a voice answered, sweet and reassuring. Yes, this is paradise. I was waiting for you. I turned abruptly, searching for the source of the voice, but I saw no one. Who are you? Where are you? I asked, but the answer came again, clear as if spoken right beside my ear. I am here. Always here. A wave of peace washed over me. Yet a part of me couldn't help but wonder, why me? What had really happened? I was still in that dark tunnel, an invisible current pushing me closer to the light. But suddenly, the feeling of peace began to waver. The air changed, became heavy, oppressive, as if something dark and terrible was waiting to reveal itself. I heard distant sounds, different from the eerie ones I had sensed before. Explosions, screams, gunshots. I was being pushed towards something I didn't fully understand, but I knew it would be devastating. Then, the light enveloped me, and everything changed. I was no longer in the tunnel. I was on an earth I didn't recognize. The sky was gray, choked by toxic clouds covering the sun. The air smelled acrid, like burning metal. Everywhere I looked, there was destruction. Collapsed skyscrapers stood like skeletons of concrete and steel. The streets, once lively and bustling with people, were deserted, except for piles of rubble and abandoned vehicle carcasses. It was 2025. I instinctively knew that it wasn't my era, but a vision of the future. A future that seemed almost unrecognizable. The scene changed. Now I was in a devastated city. Looted supermarkets with completely empty shelves lined the streets. There were no more colors, only the grayness of dust and desolation. Groups of skeletal people wandered like ghosts, dressed in rags, their faces carved by hunger and despair. Their hands trembled as they pushed each other, fighting for a piece of moldy bread or a bottle of dirty water. Water. It was clear it was lacking. I saw an endless line of people stretching towards a tanker truck. Armed soldiers monitored the distribution, but the tension was palpable. Suddenly, the line turned into a tumult. A woman with a child in her arms desperately tried to approach the truck, but was violently pushed back. Someone shouted, and within moments a fight broke out. The soldiers fired, and chaos turned into a scene of blood. It was as if water had become more precious than gold. The lack of resources had reduced people to beasts, ready to do anything to survive. The sky above me suddenly lit up, but it wasn't the sun. It was an explosion. A column of flames rose in the distance, followed by a shockwave that destroyed everything it encountered. I was safe, like an invisible spectator, but I could feel the heat and terror of that moment. I automatically moved towards the site of the explosion and saw what remained, an immense crater, surrounded by smoking rubble. It was clear it wasn't a traditional bomb. It was something new, something more powerful, a technology I had never seen before. It was as if the air itself had been burned, leaving behind a deadly void. And then I understood. I was witnessing a war fought with next-generation weapons. Weapons designed to completely annihilate the enemy without leaving any chance of escape. Black, silent drones soared through the sky like flocks of predatory birds. Each of them was armed with explosive charges, capable of striking with lethal precision. I saw them darting between buildings, chasing human targets with relentless determination. There was no way to escape. People tried to hide, but the drones seemed to know exactly where to look. In the distance, I observed another type of weapon. It was silent, but its impact was equally devastating. I saw men and women suddenly fall to the ground without even a scream. Some were clutching their throats, unable to breathe. Then I realized it was a chemical attack. An invisible fog was slowly spreading, poisoning the air and water. No one was safe. The scene changed again. Now I was in some kind of underground shelter. The air was suffocating, the ceiling low, and the concrete walls damp and cracked. Dozens of people huddled together, some sitting on the dirty floor, others curled up in the corners. Children cried, their voices weak and tired. A man was speaking to a small group, his voice grave but steady. "Food is almost gone," he said. "And the water. We have to ration that too. We can no longer afford to go out during the day. The drones patrol the streets. At night maybe we can try to recover something, but we have to move in small groups." His words were filled with despair, but also determination. I realized that these people were fighting to survive in a world that had abandoned them. "How long will it last?" asked a woman with a newborn in her arms. "How long before we die out there too?" The man didn't answer. He just looked at her, the silence more eloquent than any words. I returned to the surface. This time, I was in the middle of a battle. I saw soldiers with futuristic armor, their bodies covered by metallic exoskeletons that made them faster, stronger. They carried rifles I had never seen before, capable of firing energy bursts that cut through metal like butter. But even they were not invincible. The drones surrounded them, and within moments, the entire unit was annihilated. And then, above all, I heard a voice. It wasn't the calm, reassuring voice that had guided me until that moment. It was dark, like a distant thunder. "This is the fate that awaits humanity, if it continues down this path." The voice seemed to come from everywhere, filling the air. But not all is lost. There are still possibilities. War can be avoided, but it requires a change. A change that starts with each of you. I wanted to ask how. How could all this be stopped? But before I could, the images began to fade. The gray sky, the explosions, the suffering. Everything was slowly dissolving, leaving me with one certainty. The future of Earth was hanging by a thread, and each choice would have immense consequences. I was still in that place between dream and reality, with the weight of the choice burdening my heart. I had seen scenarios that defied my understanding, yet I knew I couldn't ignore them. As I tried to find an answer within myself, the light around me changed. It became more intense, warm, almost tangible, and with it, a presence. It was no longer just a voice. In front of me appeared a figure. It was a man, or at least that's what he seemed. His face was young, but his eyes had a depth I couldn't explain. They were eyes that seemed to know everything about me, every thought, every fear, every secret. His beard was short and well-groomed, his hair barely reaching his shoulders. But what struck me most was the aura surrounding him. It was a glow that didn't hurt the eyes, a light that conveyed peace and love. His white tunic seemed to be made of a fabric I had never seen on Earth. Pure, immaculate, as if woven from light itself. His hands were open, facing me, and only then did I notice the scars. They were deep, one on each palm, like ancient wounds that had never fully healed. His feet had similar marks, yet they didn't convey pain. On the contrary, everything about him emanated strength and compassion. "Are you Jesus?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I'm not a Christian, nor is my family, but something inside me knew who I was facing." "I am," he replied with a gentle smile. His voice was the one I had heard from the beginning, but now it had an even deeper warmth, as if each word was a caress for the soul. "Why are you here? Why are you showing me these things?" "Because it is time for you to decide," he said. "Your life on Earth is over, but your heart is still divided. I am giving you the opportunity to choose. Stay here, where there is no suffering, or return to Earth and face the path that awaits you." He took my hand, and a wave of warmth coursed through my body. It wasn't just physical, but also spiritual. It was as if every fear, every doubt, every uncertainty was swept away for a moment. With his hand in mine, the world around us changed. I saw my mother. It was the day of my funeral. She was wearing a black dress and holding a photograph of me. She was inconsolable, her despair almost palpable. My father was beside her, but he seemed like a statue, unable to move or speak. I saw the pain in my wife's eyes, a pain that seemed to break her soul. And then, our son. He was still a newborn, unaware of everything that was happening, but already an orphan without a father. "This is the future if you choose to stay," Jesus said. "Without you, they will find their way, but their journey will be harder. Your love, your guidance, will be lost forever." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. How could I condemn them to that fate? "But there won't be only pain," Jesus continued. "I want to show you also what you can leave behind if you decide to stay." The images changed. Now I saw a vision of peace. My wife had found another man, someone who treated her well. Our son was growing up in a loving home, even without me. Their life wasn't perfect, but they had found a balance, a different kind of happiness. I saw my mother and father moving on, not without effort, but with dignity. "See," Jesus said, "even without you, life will go on. But you are here because you have something unique to offer them. A guidance, a love that no one can ever replicate. The choice is yours." He let go of my hand, and the images faded. Now we were back in the paradisiacal meadow, and silence enveloped us. I felt the wind caress my skin, and the smell of fresh grass brought me back to the reality of that extraordinary place. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, trying to hold back tears. "Why do I have to be the one to decide?" "Because God gave you the gift of free will," Jesus replied. "You were never alone, but your path is yours. Your life has been full of love and sacrifice, and now you are given the chance to choose." But there was still another question tormenting me. "And the world? I saw images of war, of destruction. Is that what awaits us?" Jesus nodded, his face becoming more serious. "The future of humanity is uncertain. There will be moments of great suffering, but also of great redemption. Every life has an impact, even yours. If you choose to return, you can do your part, however small, to make the world a better place." It wasn't just a personal choice. It was a choice that would have consequences I couldn't even imagine. But the more I thought about it, the more a certainty grew inside me. I wasn't ready to leave everything. Not yet. I looked up at Jesus. "I want to return," I said firmly. "I can't leave my family. I have to be there for them, no matter what happens." Jesus smiled. "It's a courageous choice. But remember, the path won't be easy. There will be suffering, sacrifices, but you will never be alone." He took my hand again, and this time, the light around us became so intense that I had to close my eyes. I felt the world change once more. Then, a sudden pain shot through my body, like lightning spreading through every nerve. I felt the weight of my own body, heavy, oppressive, as if my return to reality was an act of pure force. The air was thick, warm, and dirty. I opened my eyes with difficulty, and the first thing I saw was the sky, a terribly familiar sky. Gray, covered by a haze, no trace of that perfect blue I had left behind. My body lay on the asphalt, surrounded by faces I didn't recognize. Sirens wailed in the distance, and someone was shouting orders. "He's coming back! Breathe! Breathe!" My vision was blurred, but I understood that I was at the exact spot where the accident had occurred. The asphalt beneath me was rough, dirty, and I felt a sharp pain in my right leg. I tried to move it, but it was useless. Something was wrong. Something was terribly wrong. "Don't move," said a voice above me, a man dressed in a paramedic uniform. "You've been involved in an accident. We'll take you to the hospital. You're alive. Do you understand? You're alive." Alive. The word echoed in my head. I had returned. I had chosen to return. I tried to speak, to respond, but the words wouldn't come out. My mouth was dry, and a metallic taste of blood filled my throat. I wanted to ask about my wife, the child, but I could do nothing but stare at the sky, trying to remember Jesus' face and the peace I had felt moments before. The ambulance raced through the city's busy streets. I felt every jolt, every turn, as if my body were an empty, fragile shell. The paramedics worked frantically on me, but their voices seemed distant, muffled. All I could do was think about what I had seen. My son's face, my wife's smile, the scars on Jesus' hands. Time seemed to flow strangely. One moment I was in the ambulance, the next in a white room, surrounded by intense lights and masked faces. Surgeons, nurses, everyone moved with precision, speaking in a medical language I didn't understand. I only knew they were fighting to save me, to keep me alive. When I reopened my eyes, silence enveloped me. There were no more sirens, no frantic voices, only the rhythmic beep of a machine beside me. The first face I saw was my wife's. Her eyes were swollen with tears, but there was a trembling smile on her lips. "You're here," she whispered, taking my hand. "You've returned." I couldn't hold back the tears. It was real. She was real. I tried to speak, but she shook her head. "Don't strain," she said. "You're still healing." Only then did I realize the gravity of the situation. I felt my body broken, but the stronger pain came from my right leg, or rather, from what was left of it. I slowly turned my gaze and saw it was gone. It ended just above the knee, wrapped in white bandages. The sight hit me like a punch to the stomach. "They couldn't save it," my wife said, her voice broken. "But you're alive. That's all that matters. You're alive, and it's a miracle. It's a miracle." Yes, I knew she was right. I had been close to death, closer than anyone could imagine, and I had chosen to return. But now that I was here, with a body that was no longer the same, I wondered if I had made the right choice. I had lost a part of myself, yet I knew I had gained something greater. The following weeks were a mix of pain, rehabilitation, and introspection. Every day was a struggle, not only to get used to my new physical condition, but also to come to terms with what I had experienced. I couldn't talk about it with anyone, not even with my wife. How could I explain what I had seen? No one would believe me. They would think I had gone crazy because of the accident. But one night, while my wife was sleeping beside me, I found myself staring at the ceiling and praying. I had never been a religious man. Growing up in an agnostic family had taught me to distrust concepts like God and faith. But now, everything had changed. I knelt down, despite the pain, and prayed for the strength to continue. I didn't know exactly whom I was talking to, but I knew someone was listening. And it was then that I heard that voice again, the same one that had guided me in the tunnel. "You're not alone. You never will be." Those words gave me a comfort I had never felt before. I knew the path would be long, but I had a mission. I had to live, not only for my wife and son, but also for something greater, something I still didn't fully understand. Thank you so much for joining me today on Heaven's Gate. I hope this story has brought you peace and reflection. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming stories, and to leave a comment below letting us know where you're listening from, so we can create an even stronger connection. It's truly important that you share this story with groups of friends or family. In doing so, you too can be instruments and carriers of the message of Jesus, our Savior. Thank you again for your support, and I'll see you soon with a new story. God bless you.